Hello and welcome to Tressler's 2022 AANHPI Heritage Month panel. Pacific Island leaders discuss Guam and the practice of law. I'm Anna Hansen from Tressler LLP, and I'm pleased to introduce Ms. Cherry Marie Destura of the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders to give our opening remarks.
I would like to thank Tressler for giving me this opportunity to provide these welcome remarks on this important event. For centuries, AANHPIs, Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, have shaped and strengthened the fabric of our nation. Yet many AA and NHPI communities continue to face barriers to prosperity and safety, including xenophobic violence and health and economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. This month, we celebrate our community's journey of resilience and pay tribute to generations of AA and NHPIs who've paved the way for greater opportunity. We also recommit ourselves to confronting discrimination and hate in all their forms so that together we can create an America that is truly equitable and inclusive. Here's to our shared legacy, strength, and unity. WHIAANHPI AA and NHPI Heritage Month theme is building legacy together, our community's journey of strength and resilience. WHIAANHPI, or the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, was first established in 1999 under President Bill Clinton as the White House Initiative on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, originally known as WHIAANHPI. The initiative was first established at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and has been continued in different iterations across administrations for over 2 decades. It was housed at the U.S. Department of Commerce under both the George W. Bush and Trump administrations, and at the U.S. Department of Education under the Obama administration. On May 28, 2021, President Joe Biden signed Executive Order 14031, advancing equity, justice, and opportunity for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders to reestablish the White House Initiative and authorize the creation of the 25-member President's Advisory Commission on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders within HHS. The executive order expands the name and scope of both the initiative and the commission to explicitly include Native Hawaiians for the first time. As a result, the initiative's name was changed to the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders in May 2021, and we now use the acronym AA and NHPI instead of AAPI to align with Executive Order 14031. HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra and the U.S. Trade Representative Ambassador Catherine Tai serve as co-chairs of both the initiative and the commission. Last summer, President Biden appointed Crystal Kai as Executive Director of the initiative, making her the first Native Hawaiian in his history to ever serve in this role. The new WHIAANHPI is charged with driving an ambitious whole-of-government agenda to advance equity, justice, and opportunity for AA and NHPI communities in 14 key priorities areas, which also includes formalizing the role of the regional network. Regional offices are a critical link to the AA and NHPI community. They are connected to community-based organizations, community leaders, and state and local officials who understand the unique concerns and issues that these diverse communities face. We truly believe in the work of our regional network and are confident that our regional approach will provide, through its innovative approaches ranging from interagency collaboration to on-the-ground community outreach. The initiative seeks to highlight both tremendous unmet needs in the AA and HPI community, as well as the federal resources that can be leveraged to meet those needs. The initiative's mission stems from the belief that no matter who you are, where you came from, or what you look like, the United States forever is a place where the American dream is within reach for all who work hard and seek to make a better life. Through our renewed White House Initiative, we're working to advance equity, justice, and opportunity for AA and NHPIs across the country. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Cherry. That was a wonderful introduction, and thank you for all of the important work that you do. I think it really situates the importance of us having programs like this. So we are honored to have you with us today. We are also honored to have some great panelists today. So first we have the Honorable Judge Arthur Barcinas. He is Superior Court Judge of the Judiciary of Guam and Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the Republic of Palau. Welcome. We also have attorney Christine Claveria, legal counsel for the Port Authority of Guam, and Jihoon Kim, an employment attorney here at Tressler LLP in Orange County, California. And Jihoon is also a member of Tressler's Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and he organized today's program. So thank you. All right, well, let's get started. First, I'd like you each to tell us a little bit about yourself, your career, and what time is it where you are? So Christine, let's start with you.
My name is Christine Claveria. I'm currently in Guam. It is 11:33 a.m. So with that, I am currently in-house legal counsel at the Port Authority of Guam, Guam's only local port, and I've been in this position for almost a year and a half now. I am a Chamorro woman born and raised in Guam. I am also the first of my family to go to law school, and with that, the first lawyer in my family. When I'm not working, I usually spend my free time at my local CrossFit gym and home cuddling with my Shih Tzu, Chia.
That's wonderful. How about you, Judge Barcinas?
I am Judge Barcinas. I've been a Superior Court judge now for 15 years and was in private practice, pretty much sole practitioner for 14 years before coming to the bench. And unlike Christine, I'm never not working, so I'm constantly working. And so that's pretty much it.
Great. And what time zone are you in? What time is it where you are?
I am on Guam as well. It is 11 something, 11:34 in the morning. And yes, as Christine said, off a day, everyone.
Thank you. And how about you, Jihoon?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jihoon. I am an employment attorney here at the Orange County office of Tressler. And right now it is 6:35 p.m. on Thursday, May the 12th, here in Irvine, California. So I practice employment law and as well as real estate litigation here in the employment group. And in my free time, I like to hang out with my family. I have a lovely wife and 2 kids, aged 2 and 4. And when they let me, I like to go fish.
When they let you. I love it. Well, thank you for joining us. Let's go back to Judge Barcinas. What do you love most about Guam?
That it is the homeland of the Chamorro people, right? That I think that's what makes our experience and our history and in honesty, our confidence in the world is that knowing that we have someplace we call home, and uniquely our own home. I know that doesn't sound really cool in a diversity and inclusion, but I think that if you ask that, what is it that I love about Guam, is that it is the homeland of the Chamorro, and that the people come from here, unique customs, unique language, and it's just, but within that, being part of the American family, it's also quite a melting pot. Sometimes a hot mess of a melting pot, but it's it's interesting, it's fun, and pretty much that.
That's great. Thank you. How about you, Christine?
That's beautiful. And really just going off of what said, thinking about it now, it's when I'm off island or even going off island for school and people ask, what's Guam like? What is so special about Guam? It's really hard to pinpoint one thing. People can say the scenery, the warmth, the food, and Jihoon can attest to the food, the local food. But really it's the familial aspect. Yeah, being proud to be Chamorro, the Chamorro culture, the Chamorro language, and like Judge Barcinas said, just having a place to call home and being, although diverse in this day and age, just having that sense of belonging and just being proud. Like, I'm from Guam, this small dot in the Pacific Ocean where there's so many things going on here in this bustling island, really. And other than living in a postcard, and I'm very blessed to say that. Yeah, just the closeness and the familial aspect of the island.
That's beautiful. Thank you. So Jihoon, I'll take that question one step further. So, what do you love about Guam? And then what do you wish more people knew about Guam in general?
So I spent about 2.5 years on Guam working with Judge Barcinas for about 1.5 years of that. And if the thing that I miss most about Guam is I think Christine mentioned it was the food. The local Chamorro food is absolutely amazing. It's a mix, I think, of Pan-Asian food, a lot of barbecue, marinades. You got the Filipino influence with sort of the adobo style dishes, red rice. I've never seen rice being served with that's the color red, but in Guam, red rice is something that you can get even at KFC. And it's ubiquitous. Besides the food, I found that people on Guam very, very welcoming and very friendly to off-islanders like myself, the judge, and his chambers, Christine, all the people that took me in didn't make me feel like I was from off-island, and really welcomed me into their little community. And one thing that really, really stuck out to me was how similar the Chamorro family unit was to sort of the traditional Korean family unit, and how close, how close those ties are. And nobody moves too far away from the house, from the family. In Korea, it was like that before everyone started moving over to Seoul, but everybody still during holidays would go down to Korea, go to their hometowns and spend the big holidays there. And just all those aspects like that just really, really stuck out to me. And I think that a lot of people would do themselves a service by visiting Guam, because the richness in culture, there's thousands and thousands of years of culture on that little postcard. You go out into the jungle and you can see laddie stones. So behind me, you see something that looks like a column. That's a laddie stone, and that's sort of one of the symbols of Guam. And you see those just in fields and in the jungle out there, and these are the original things. And I've always thought that history and culture was fascinating. For those people who are history buffs, World War II battles were fought here. A lot.
Those laddie stones in real life are much bigger, though. They're the foundations of the huts, and that raised living quarters above the water. Floods and rains and things of those things that happen in a tropical island. So yeah, I don't like. I was thinking when Jihoon was describing it, that people were walking around finding little laddie stones sitting in that size, sitting in the jungle. And one of the things that I'm just jumping in, and
please, yes.
One of the things is Guam is central, is as we discussed at some point earlier, before going onto the recording, was that it's a central hub, and so of many of the islands, largely because of the U.S. presence on Guam, and Guam is unique in many ways that it is and for the longest time been a U.S. territory. And that plays into some of our discussion later on in the questions that we have lined up. But up on my wall here, so that I don't look like I'm in a holding cell, we put up these items. This turtle comes from wood carvings from Palau, right? And that's something that is unique to their culture and their traditions. They're really good craftsmen and carve that out. And the other piece behind me, and the piece that's on Jihoon's wall there, is from Pohnpei and from the Federated States of Micronesia. Each one have their own unique style of weaving and art craft. So we get to interact with all of those areas and learn from them. We have judicial organizations that interact with each other on that. So the richness of the culture, just not unique to Guam, but the whole Pacific and our interactions.
That's great. No, that's super helpful information too for people who aren't as familiar with Guam and Palau. So I will take that next direction with that question. So Judge, just sticking with you, what is it like practicing law in a US territory? And were there a lot of challenges? Do you see challenges now as a judge? How does that impact you?
It's really interesting. It's quite a unique history. The local lawyers, Christine says that she's the first lawyer in her family. And Christine forgets that we are distantly related. And I am the first lawyer in this clan.
Stand corrected, Judge.
He's got you.
In her immediate family, she is the first.
My immediate family, yes.
Yeah, but in in the clan, I'm the man. I'm the it. Anyway, so what's interesting and what most people don't really know, and unfortunately, one of our oldest bar members, who happens to be the grandfather of Christine's husband, I think he holds bar number 01.
Wow.
Recently passed away. But Guam's common law or statutory law, we used to be under the naval government of the US Navy right after the war. And when we started to take on the vestiges of self-governance, we adopted California law. And the main reason we adopted California law is that the young men who went out, and I say men because they were all men, went out to law school in California for the most part. And they came back home to be the leaders and start assuming roles of leadership. And so for better or for worse, the only law that they knew was California law. And so we adopted in 1950, when or sometime after the Organic Act was passed, California statutory law. And our Supreme Court, when we finally had a Supreme Court not too long ago, about 10 years ago, when we finally had the Supreme Court come into power or into being, because we started out only with the Superior Court. So the only courts that were local were Superior Court. We had not established a Supreme Court. And our appellate jurisdiction was the United States District Court. And so when we established our own Supreme Court, they acknowledged that we would continue to follow any statutory interpretation of California codes that can be traced back in its original form back to that time in California. And so that makes some of it really challenging and interesting to go all the way back to the 1950s for controlling precedent and stuff like that. I don't know how to do it today. I think Jihoon and Christine are the only ones left who know how to do it, because we've had some really high profile cases that were really challenging, but it's all US law. In fact, for better or for worse, unfortunately, I think for worse, we adopted the federal rules of civil procedure for our Superior Court. And so it was hilarious to me because, you know, how people say don't make it into a federal case. Well, we made every case in our Superior Court. We turned it into a federal case. So those were a lot of growing pains. So it's not that far from that. And Christine, myself, and every lawyer on Guam pretty much goes to a US mainland law school. And so in terms of the practice itself, it's not unfamiliar or something unique. What's unique is the history of how it came to be.
Great. Well, thank you, Judge, for that answer. So some of you might have noticed Christine just did a magical quick change to have some new audio. But Christine, I want to pass that question off to you. You know, what is it like practicing law in the Pacific Islands? Yeah, what would you like to add?
Yes, again, pivoting off of what Judge Barcinas was talking about the U.S. Navy's governance on Guam and the establishment of Guam's Organic Act. It's interesting because here at the Port Authority, for many, actually was established and was governed by the U.S. Navy for quite some time. And it wasn't until probably the 50s or the 60s where the U.S. Navy deeded or gave the Port Authority and not back, but gave it into the hands of the local government. And so a lot of the things that I've been noticing during my time here is we have a lot of these land leases that are 50, 60, 70 years old that were established by the US Navy, governed under the US Code. And it makes it difficult when we're trying to navigate and establish ourselves as a autonomous agent, a government agency. How do we navigate like this? Do we grandfather these leases in? What do we do when in the US Code, it clearly states this is given, deeded by the US Navy government. You will give you easements. You have autonomy to do what you want with the land, but at any time it can be taken. And so what do we do with like that? How can we grow knowing in the back of our heads that at any moment we can establish this big, I don't know, cement factory, and it's helping the economy and it's bringing in all these goods and services into the island. But at any time we can just, the land can be taken by the US Navy. And that's a lot of the things that we consider when we go through the leases and contracts here at the port is, again, a lot of the history stems from that US Navy governance. But other than that, it's fun. It's, I, as a young attorney, only practicing for less than 2 years, but, clerking under Judge Barcinas and learning a lot, I've learned that there's a lot of precedent to be made. Our jurisdiction, our court systems, they're fairly young in comparison to the United States. And so you see a lot of these attorneys, young and old, coming in, bringing cases from different jurisdictions, trying to build our own case law here on island. So I think that's the fun part. That's what makes it interesting. And like Judge Barcina said, a lot of us go off island and learn US laws. So when we come back, we're familiar, we're well equipped. And that's what, again, makes it fun and interesting.
No, that is really interesting. And I didn't know that about the Navy. I don't think many people do. So I was also curious, Jihoon, you're in California now. You did practice on Guam. How do those compare to you?
So just a quick technical note. I clerked under Judge Barcinas. I wasn't barred in Guam, so unfortunately I wasn't allowed to practice.
Okay, thank you.
But the Guam judicial system and California system is very, very, it feels similar, but the scale of the California judicial system just blows Guam out of the water. I'm sorry, Judge, but
all right.
For us to get a hearing date here in LA County, I mean, you're looking for an motion for summary judgment, you're looking minimally 6 months. Yeah, realistically 9 months to a year out.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how busy these judges are. And COVID has only made it worse, where all of that backlog that they've accrued, because the courts in California were shut down for 3 months completely. And they're just now starting to clear it. So that's affecting our trial schedule. Judges are under more pressure to clear out all the trials that are accrued. So unless someone is dying or you're somebody on their deathbed in your family, judges are less likely to move a trial to accommodate someone's schedule conflicts. Perhaps in the past, they might have been more open to moving schedules and shifting the schedules around. But that definitely is a challenge for us, because since April, we were scheduled to have 3 trials back to back to back because the judges would not move it. Now, for differing reasons, 2 of them have been moved, but that was a challenge, getting 3 trials ready in about a 2-month span.
Sure. How does that compare to Guam's timing? I'm curious.
Oh, on COVID? Yeah. Go ahead, Jim. Good.
So what I remember is that because there's so many lawyers and these judges are so packed, we can pick out our own hearing spots on the court online calendaring system. I don't know if that has changed on Guam, but judge would just have Yvonne, his chamber clerk, to call out a trial date. And I don't remember if judge says, let's come back in 60 days. You know, Yvonne would either do 60 days on the dot or give or take 3 or 4 days. It'd be pretty quick. For us, 60 days might not be 60 days. If we ask the judge with this first stipulation, we've moved this past 60 days, that 60 days might become 4 months.
Yeah.
Wow, sure.
So we have to be flexible with that. And one of the things that I miss about working on Guam is that in California, we have a very old jurisdiction with so much precedent that there's really not much room to move. So it's how do you work within that precedent?
Yeah.
On Guam, it felt like we were in the Wild West, where since there's not much precedent, at least from the Supreme Court level, it's, you know, what can you bring before the judge that sounds good? Let's see what we can do to make the most judicial sense of it. So, I think that would have been kind of fun to do sort of that, because you can be more creative, and express what your opinion on what the law you think says. So those are some differences, and there's definitely challenges associated with those things.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you all for that comparison. And speaking of judges, I'm going to go over to Judge Barcinas, who is very modest so far in this discussion, but you have a very impressive career judge. So if you could tell us a little bit about your experience, and then if you could also share some advice for attorneys, I think that would be really great.
Okay, so for the young attorneys, and this is coming from my experience on the bench, your first impression and your credibility are the two most important things in your presentation before a court, especially one that you're going to be appearing in front of regularly, right? There are some, believe it or not, the lawyers who are not prepared and who are not credible in many things, we spend more time reading their stuff, not because we find it interesting, not because we find it intriguing. It's because we can't trust their work, and we can't trust, and you don't want your decision maker to go in with that, right? Skeptical of your claim, skeptical of your position, skeptical about whether or not you did your research. I might be humble, but Christine and Jihoon are
not.
No, they really are. I think they are more humble in comparison. Between the two of them, to Jihoon's point and to Christine's point, we are still, when people are critical of our island and our island government, I say, well, Guam is still a young democracy, a democracy that came into being in 1950. And so a lot of it is still growing pains, a lot of things that are happening, we're still learning our way. And so that also means what Jihoon was talking about is we have an opportunity, even more so than the Supreme Court, to shape the law, because how we fashion and approach a problem at the trial court level and the way the law works, what we find to be the facts, what we find to be the situation in the case in front of us, is binding on the Supreme Court, right? With respect to the facts, we control the facts, and they apply the law. And more often than not, I'd say about 98% of the time, we are upheld, especially with these two awesome clerks, who mostly I just have to correct the case number if they were moving so fast that they forgot to change the case number in their drafts. It's a 1 or 2 read for me, and they've gotten it by the time they left here, because we would discuss the case, we would read the briefs, and then we would hear the arguments, and then the law clerks would come back and I'd say, this is where I think we're going. And the most important admonishment to my clerks is, if you think the law doesn't support where we're headed, you've got to tell me that so that we can adjust and turn in a different direction. And so these two particular clerks, I really enjoyed their time with me. And I missed their work a lot of times because they could predict where I'm headed. And so I didn't have to talk a lot. And they were good writers. And so I am like watching my students go out into the world like some grandmaster, right? And I take the time now to make sure that the last clerk that Christine hired, and that's the one thing I do different from all the other judges. My law clerk has to hire their replacement.
Oh, wow.
Right? So they do the interviews, they know what the court is expecting. And so they go through and do that. And so far, my last law clerk who recently just went into another big firm was saying, Judge, I'm looking around. And I said, have a seat. I'm not releasing you from your contract. You're not ready yet, right? I said, there's still some stuff we need to work on, and I'm not gonna let you go out with the title that you clerked under me. And that's Judge Barcinas's training and work product when you enter in the workforce. And so I'm happy to say she reached that point fairly quickly thereafter.
Sure.
And you know, and set off and got hired at probably one of the biggest firms left on the island, because we've had a lot of firms changing composition. I did want to go back to one thing though.
Yes,
When
please.
Jihoon was talking about food. And,
Please.
and this is, I think, is really the beauty of diversity and inclusion and the strength that comes from it. That by the time Jihoon left to go to California, I agreed to let him go because he just kept crying. He somehow wanted to be with his family for some reason. I said, your career, young man, your career. Anyway, by the time Jihoon left, we were eating more Korean food than he was eating tomorrow food, right? And so, Anna, you got to try this tonight.
Please,
right after
I'm
this.
hopping on a plane. I am jealous.
Now, this is what we learned from Jihoon. You take some instant ramen and you cook it up regular, and then you make sure you add a slice of American cheese.
Really? Okay. So literally a melting pot with cheese
Yes,
is what you're saying.
exactly. And it will change your whole approach to instant ramen.
I love it. That
Yeah.
needs to be a question I add to these diversity discussions.
It was
Is
the food, right?
what is your food? Christine, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say I have pictures of evidence we could show with our audience.
I love it. Please. We'll just kind of shifting to speaking about culture. So again, happy Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. You know, it's a mouthful, but it's super important that we include everyone in that. Christine, I want to go to you first. You know, what does this month mean to you?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I'll be honest, I didn't know AAPI month until I left and went to law school.
Okay.
And there was a club that joined and they were like, hey, you know, we are Asian American Pacific Islanders. We have this group. We study different, you know, case law surrounding, you know, yeah, basically just, I had no idea, right, that this was, you know, it wasn't until I was in law school. And so when reading about it and joining these clubs and hearing of all these amazing people, Asian Americans in history and things like that, it really, what it means to me is just recognition and acknowledgement of not only our culture or our heritage or any Asian American Pacific Islander heritage, but the history and significance, impact that many of these Asian Americans Pacific Islanders have contributed, not only in the United States, but in the world. So again, it's just remembering our history, being proud of where I'm from, and recognizing the accomplishments and success of our fellow Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders around the world. So I think it's a beautiful month to commemorate that. And I'm, you know, since learning about it, I celebrate it and I recognize it and I think it's awesome.
Well said. Thank you. How about you, Jihoon?
So as a proud Korean American, it's actually quite remarkable how the perception of Korea has sort of changed over, since I moved to the United States in the 80s. So, back in the 80s, Hyundai was the car that would always break down, nobody wanted to buy. But fast forward today, you can't get a Kia Telluride or a Hyundai Palisade because they're all sold out. One of the things Korea, when you ask someone about Korea, one of the first things they'll say is, "Oh, I love BTS," and K-pop and K-culture. You go on Netflix and you see how many Korean shows and dramas are on Netflix, and people are consuming that.
True.
I own a Samsung phone, and Samsung, LG made huge strides in the electronics market, where a lot of people have Samsung appliances at home. I'm staring into a LG monitor right now. I'm sure a lot of people have Samsung Galaxy S phones, Galaxy Notes, more so than, maybe brands that come from other countries. So I think it's remarkable that we've come this far, not just as, a Korean American community or a Korean community, but just as an Asian American community where, our culture is being more sought out. We're not just exotic. We're not exotic. It's actually kind of cool to want to go to Korea to learn Korean and do like a temple stay, or go teach English in Japan. I wish that more people would have the opportunity to go experience Guam, because they'll love it. Just the richness in culture and history, and the fact that we get a month to just kind of showcase that, I think is wonderful.
I love that. Thank you. And how about you, Your Honor? What does this month mean to you?
I think Christine and Jihoon would tell you that I'll strike up a conversation with anyone, anywhere, any moment. And it's because I personally appreciate people's stories, right? And so this is what this is about. And I have mixed emotions about it, because we want to celebrate their stories, but it also is about making sure that we take our proper place at the table, as Sherry called it, the American dream that we all share, right? And that we take our place at that table. And so I personally don't have a lot in the way of experiencing discrimination in all the things. I used to be in the military. In fact, I didn't start out trying to go to college. I started out by saying I wanted to be in the military. And then I accidentally won a scholarship that they were able to pay for my college. And I said, well, okay, better than shining boots right now. So I'll do that. And so, I took that path, and that military path really showed me a lot, because when I went through the military, when they said that the only two colors were green and the blood that we bled, they meant it. And I was with guys training who were training us, who were coming from the Vietnam Wars, and most of them were minorities and blacks, right? And a lot of white guys as well. But we all got along, despite all the differences that might have been there, and despite all the prejudices. And anytime we finished a tour of training or duty together, we all walked out as friends. And I think that is, I don't want this month to be used to divide, but to recognize inclusiveness, really, and recognize the beauty of the strengths that come from all of us working together. And I think that's what it means to me.
Thank you. That is beautifully said. And I don't think we can top that as a finale here. So thank you. This has been a wonderful discussion. Thank you to our panelists and to Cherry Marie Destura from the White House Initiative for joining us. That was pretty amazing. So on behalf of Tressler's Diversity and Inclusion Committee, we thank you for watching this program. For more information about our speakers, we have some helpful links in the description of this video. And to learn more about Tressler's award-winning attorneys throughout the country, please visit www.tresslerllp.com. Well, thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.